Welcome to The Know, I'm Ashley Jenkins.
And I'm Gus Sorola.
If you didn't get a hold of an NES Classic system and you don't feel like paying over $300 to get it from a scalper, don't worry, Nintendo might have something else up its sleeve. Something super.
I'm super not excited.
Well, that's too bad, because it might be happening.
Eurogamer is reporting that Nintendo is planning to release a mini version of the Super Nintendo this year, apparently further tapping into the nostalgia that the NES Classic unleashed last year and infuriating hordes of people who are unable to get it and are now reading news about it and are extremely bitter.
Not naming names. The launch is expected to take place around Christmas this year, and Nintendo is already at work developing the mini system, according to Eurogamer's report. So get excited, the 12 of you who will actually get your hands on one of these before Nintendo discontinues it. I am one of the ones who got the NES Classic, not to rub it in.
Hate you. Obviously, this is big news for retro gamers, especially retro RPG fans, because the SNES was a powerhouse in that department. And if this rumor is true, it might also explain why Nintendo unexpectedly stopped production of the NES Mini earlier this year. That really caught everyone off guard, considering the NES Mini was a huge hit, was plagued from shortages right from the beginning.
Interestingly, Eurogamer says that production of the SNES Mini is the reason why Nintendo has stopped production of the NES Mini this year. That left a lot of gamers who wanted the console frustrated at the supply shortage, the constant supply shortage that led to a big resale market online.
That makes sense, right? I mean, people are going to want an SNES Mini, so stop producing the NES Mini, right?
Right. Well, that's what they did when the SNES came out. They definitely didn't release a new version of the NES after the SNES came out.
Looking at you, Nintendo. The SNES console is expected to be similar to its cousin, with a bunch of games that are pre-installed and ready to play, and we assume it'll have HDMI output and controller cords that are about half an inch long.
Yeah, it's so short. If the SNES Mini does turn out to be real, it would have a ton of games to choose from. Like, so many games, you'd hope that this one would have 50 games on it instead of the NES Mini's 30. I mean, we're talking first-party stuff like Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country, Super Metroid, Super Mario Kart, Super Mario RPG, A Link to the Past, just to name a few.
All quality games. But what about third-party games? Well, we know from the NES Mini there were at least some third-party developers involved. The NES Mini had games from Koei Tecmo, Square Enix, although it was probably Square back then.
It was just Square. Weird, right?
Yeah. Konami, Capcom, and Bandai Namco. Also, that was probably...
Namco Bandai.
Yeah,
or wait, was it
Bandai,
even, yeah.
or Namco.
Still separate.
Whatever. History lesson. That could mean that the SNES could get games like Final Fantasy 2 and 3, Chrono Trigger, and maybe The Secret of Mana. You know, would that be too much to ask for those 12 people?
Hopefully not, but it might make it expensive. So how true is this rumor likely to be? Well, Nintendo's declined to comment, but we should note that Eurogamer says it has multiple sources confirming the story, not just one. It's also worth noting that Eurogamer has been right in the past about a lot of Nintendo-related news. Way back in July last year, they reported that the Switch, or the Nintendo NX as it was known back then, it would be a portable console with detachable controllers, and that was right on the money.
It sounded ridiculously crazy at the time.
Right, we're like, there's no way they can make that work.
What does that mean?
Yeah, that sounds great, just impossible, and now we have a Switch.
And Eurogamer also broke the story that the NX would be powered by NVIDIA Tegra chips, which also turned out to be right. So Eurogamer, you've got a good track record of being right about these things. On the other hand, they've also reported that the Switch would get a version of Pokemon Sun and Moon, codenamed Pokemon Stars, and that hasn't happened yet. So I guess nobody's right all the time, but let's be honest, probably gonna happen.
Probably, yes. I think so. The move to release the SNES Mini, if it happens, comes at kind of an interesting time for Nintendo. When they released the NES Classic last year, the Switch wasn't on the market yet, and the Mini NES really helped Nintendo's name get back out there in the media. A lot of people were talking about it. It also got a lot of people like re-energized with their Nintendo nostalgia.
I'm super energized.
Got people excited for the Switch.
But if an SNES Mini does happen, is there danger of it stealing the Switch's thunder? Obviously, they're two very different consoles, but there's possibly a danger of Nintendo cannibalizing its own audience. I don't think so,
well,
but it's possible.
Probably not the console itself, but along those lines, it could potentially eat into virtual console sales.
True.
The virtual console for Switch hasn't launched yet, but we know that it's coming. It was the rumored reason as to why Nintendo stopped making the NES Classic. We figured that just suddenly discontinuing it for apparently no reason, it meant that probably virtual console was coming, and they didn't want to like eat in on those sales.
I figured that's why you couldn't download or add more games to the device.
Right, because they don't want to like, meh. But if that's the case, why are they coming out with an SNES mini console? Because that would have the potential to eat even more into virtual console sales, given that Super Nintendo produced some of the best, most beloved games of all time.
Maybe Nintendo's plan is to just release a limited number of those throwback consoles every year, make money, make people mad, and get out.
Sounds like a winning strategy.
But it still is a little weird. Nintendo has a brand new console out and meanwhile continues to release throwback consoles at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, why would Nintendo release a retro console over the Christmas holiday when you presumably want all of the attention around the Switch? This is their first big Christmas. This is their big go-to-market for the mainstream audience outside Nintendo enthusiasts. After all, Super Mario Odyssey is set to release around the holiday season for the Switch. That's typically the busiest time of the year in the video game industry. Again, it kind of seems like Nintendo could be running the risk of possibly competing with themselves, even if the consoles are very, very different in overall tone.
And availability. At any rate, if there is a SNES Mini, what would you want to see? Ars Technica already posted a wish list that included downloadable game stores, support for multiple systems, and original controllers, and most of all, more supply.
We actually did, remember over the holiday period, like over our holiday break, we did a video predicting an SNES Classic and the games we'd want to see on it. I like to think Nintendo just saw that list and thought, you know, you're right.
You should go watch that video and see what we think should be on the SNES Mini.
Huh. If only it was in the end slate. At any rate, while this rumor hasn't been confirmed yet, it could be a sign that Nintendo hasn't abandoned making retro consoles, just they've been busy cooking up a new one. And given the Super Nintendo's legendary catalog of games, this one really could have shined its predecessor and be even less available. Unless you go ahead and make more of them this time, Nintendo, which we know you won't.
What do you guys think of the possibility of a Super Nintendo mini console? Would you pick one up? Let us know in the comments.
And what games would you want to see on it? Let us know. And for all your news about which retro console that Nintendo will sell out of in 30 seconds, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the Know. Interestingly, Eurogamer says that production of the SNES Mini is the reason why Nintendo stopped production of the NES Mini earlier this year. That left a lot of... Did I say that right?
Yeah?
Okay.
It doesn't make any sense. I don't blame you for wondering if you said that wrong or not, because that makes zero fucking sense.
Tell us how you really feel.